When staying in a hotel, the magician faced several strange events. There was actually an old man lying under his bed. A maid was hiding in the cupboard. The wallpaper was bulging, as if there were living things hidden behind it. Most shockingly, the corridor that was completely unobstructed last night was suddenly blocked by an extra wall. When he woke up, and he went around in circles but couldn't find his way. Just then, the corridor shook inexplicably, and the ceiling lights kept flickering. The next second, an orchestral band emerged from a secret passage. They played music while following behind the magician. He was so scared that he fled everywhere. The magician happened to see a smoking old woman, and hid in her room to shake off the band. However, in the blink of an eye, he was fated by two identical faces. These two women were like the elderly version of the twins in The Shining, one named Ruth and the other Sarah. The magician asked them if they knew the way out. He had a performance in a tavern today, and had to rush to the venue as soon as possible, but the two old ladies hadn't been out for decades. They took the magician to see a map, but the map only applied to part of the corridor, and didn't mark the exit at all. Just then, Sarah said mysteriously, "You can go to the prophet, that person knows everything." Ruth quickly interrupted her sister and said, "That witch is just talking nonsense." The magician said goodbye to them, and continued to look for a way out. Several children ran past noisily. He put his suitcase down to rest for a while, and accidentally saw a fat woman come out of the room. The magician was about to go up and ask for directions, but those naughty children took the opportunity to pick up his suitcase and run into a room on one side of the corridor. The magician chased after them and opened the door, only to find it was filled with other things, and no one was there. Could it be that those children disappeared out of thin air? Now there was only one of the two suitcases left. The unlucky band also marched in step and reappeared. Luckily, several waiters passed by with plates at this point. To avoid the band, the magician followed them through a door, and it was bustling inside. A woman with a curly afro greeted him warmly. The magician explained, "I'm looking for some children who took my suitcase." However, the woman with the afro turned a deaf ear, and took the magician to a dining table, to introduce him to her friends. The magician said awkwardly, "I'm going to be late. I must leave the hotel as soon as possible." Upon hearing this, the woman with the afro ordered her subordinates to look for the children who took the suitcase, and two attendants brought roasted food and placed it in front of the magician, implying that he must eat. The magician had to pick up a bunch of grapes and put them on the plate. He was trying to find a chance to slip away, but the woman with the afro pressed him back into his seat. Seeing the people in the hall busy packing luggage, the magician asked the woman with the afro, "Are you moving out?" The woman with the afro said, "My century tour is about to start. They are packing performance props." As soon as she finished speaking, for servants with chubby faces and only wearing boxer shorts carried out a golden bathtub. The woman with the afro untied her bathrobe right away, and prepared to take a bath. The people at the dining table hurriedly pushed the magician to leave, as if something unexpected had happened. The magician was really confused. He was pushed out of the room by the crowd. Before he could find his suitcase, the magician looked at his watch and found that he was already late, and the fat woman who had appeared earlier suddenly came out of nowhere, and put a tray in the magician's hand. Then she called out to the waiters behind her, "Line up and hurry up." The magician unwittingly became one of the tray carriers. They walked down the stairs into the kitchen, where the chefs were bustling with activity. When the fat woman saw the magician standing there stupidly, she put an apron on him. The magician had to follow several assistant chefs to crack eggs.
Most people have worked for years to get a job like yours. You swiped it just minutes after you set foot into the kitchen.
The magician didn't want this kind of blessing. He just wanted to find his suitcase and leave this hellish place. John next to him was very friendly and outgoing. He said enviously, "Melinda is staring at you. She's the chef's daughter. Maybe she likes you a little." The magician didn't want to stay any longer and asked how to leave. Upon hearing this, John said, "Why are you so spineless? Why do you want to leave as soon as you arrive?" "I'm going to stay here and make great achievements, striving to be promoted to the spoon level next week." The so-called spoon level was just about boiling an egg. John introduced that the next level up is sorting various eggs, then stirring egg whites, and so on until becoming the head chef. Unexpectedly, the division of labor in such a small kitchen was so detailed. As soon as the head chef approached, the egg-cracking guy's hands trembled nervously. The magician performed a few tricks with eggs, to prove to John that he was indeed a magician, and had no intention of seeking a job in the kitchen. Melinda was secretly watching. After cracking eggs all day, the magician was taken to the dormitory by colleagues, for drinking and chatting after work. When he woke up from his hangover, he found that his suit and shirt were gone. The magician was furious and determined to complain to the front desk. Anyway, meeting is a matter of fate. He sincerely thanked John and prepared to leave, but as soon as he approached the utility room, Melinda pulled him in. John was right. The plump girl had indeed taken a liking to the magician, and due to her weight, the magician could only give in helplessly. Not only that, but the head chef also admired him. This made the magician wonder, could his chosen career really be as a chef? In the end, the magician decided to stay temporarily to study eggs. Just then, he heard a sound of wooden planks being squeezed. For some reason, the magician always felt that the entire hotel seemed to be continuously shrinking. He left the dormitory to go to the bathroom, but at this point, someone was frantically twisting the doorknob. The magician quickly shouted, "Someone's inside. Please wait a moment."
Is it true what they say? Are you the liberator?
The next second, the door panel was smashed, and several hands reached in to grope around. The magician immediately kicked them out and explained that he was a passing guest and knew nothing about any liberators. The people outside finally left upon hearing this, but the magician didn't dare to go out, and actually fell asleep leaning against the wall. The next day, John came to wake him up, and told the magician to hurry back to work. From their conversation, it was learned that John had been working there for 7 years. The magician asked if he had ever left the hotel. John stammered that he had gone out once or twice, but he was very satisfied with life in the kitchen, and had no desire to leave at all. The magician pressed, "Then do you know where the exit is?" Upon hearing this, John couldn't utter a word. In fact, he had never left the hotel since he entered it. Just then, a familiar chubby dog approached, and then the magician saw the hotel receptionist. He hurried to chase after her, but the woman disappeared in an instant. But the magician knew he hadn't mistaken her, because the dog had been lying at the door when he checked in. He finally came to his senses, realized he couldn't be trapped in the hotel, and mustered the courage to resign from the head chef. However, when the old man learned the magician was leaving, he actually knelt down and wept before him. This scene attracted chefs to gather and watch. The magician quickly pulled him up.
I have such great hopes for you, you know.
The magician had to stay and was promoted to the stirring department. In just 2 days, John was extremely jealous when he saw this. He had worked hard here for 7 years, yet he was no better than a newcomer. The magician noticed John's cold attitude and explained, "I don't care about the job at all. The head chef forced it on me. If you want it, I can recommend you." The magician said this sincerely, but to John, it sounded like pure showing off. Having lost his only friend, the magician returned to his room. He wanted to take the opportunity to verify his guess about the hotel shrinking, so he tied a taut rope to the window and doorknob. When he woke up the next day, the rope was indeed loose. The magician hurriedly went to share this with John, and propped his hands against the wall to prove it to him. 2 days ago, the corridor was wider than the magician's arm span, but now it seemed much narrower. When John entered the kitchen to prepare for work, he also clearly felt it had become unusually crowded. The magician immediately went to report to the head chef, and proposed dividing the kitchen staff into 2 groups, sending a small team to investigate the cause of the shrinking, while the rest searched for the exit together. This way, all guests could be notified in time for a quiet and orderly evacuation. However, the head chef only cared about delivering breakfast to guests on time, and ignored everything outside the kitchen. The magician was displeased upon hearing this. Is breakfast more important than people's lives? What's the point of eating breakfast if we're all dead? Despite the head chef's threats, the magician immediately stood on the kitchen counter, and told everyone the hotel was shrinking. "If you don't believe me, look around. The tools aren't in their proper places at all." But no one dared to contradict the head chef. In the end, the magician was expelled from the kitchen for scaremongering. Returning to his room, he saw the twin old ladies moving furniture out, maybe because the shrinking room couldn't accommodate so many large items. At night, the magician heard the orchestra's tap dancing again. All hotel residents were dancing to the music, and the waves of sound made the hotel walls tremble continuously. As the only normal person, the magician was on the verge of a breakdown. As the music reached its climax, the wallpaper on the wall was suddenly torn, the window glass shattered, and the magician slammed his head into the floor. He got up and looked out the window, only to see identical windows everywhere outside. The magician had finally had enough of this hellish place. He took out a partial map of the corridor, and pasted it on the wall, then threw all the extra furniture in the room downstairs. Every day when he woke up, the magician did one thing. He groped through the building's passages to expand his map himself. The more fragments he pasted on the wall, the more areas he explored. However, after several days of searching, the magician still couldn't find the exit. One day, he faced the front desk's dog again, a chubby pup that kept tearing at the wallpaper on the wall. The magician was about to greet it, when the corridor lights suddenly went out, and a figure of an old man flashed by. The magician picked up a flashlight from the ground and checked around. Soon, the lights returned to normal, and the old man stood silently at the end of the corridor. The magician recognized him as the man who had hidden under his Bet on the day he checked in, the old man refused to speak like a wooden doll. When the magician moved forward, he stepped back. When the magician turned to leave, he shuffled after him, not knowing if the old man was a threat. The magician chose to hide back in his room first, however. Late at night, his door quietly opened a crack. When the magician woke up, it was already dawn. He tried to pull the quilt but found the old man from last night curled up at his feet, sound asleep. The magician jumped out of bed in fright, then mustered up the courage to push the old man, only to find he was sleeping so deeply that he couldn't be woken. When the old man woke up, he sat in the corridor watching the magician write and draw, with an old hen between them, creating an eerie scene. The magician shared his hidden food with the old man, then focused on drawing the map. Unexpectedly, something began to squirm behind the wallpaper. He bravely tore a corner, and found the wall cement filled with flesh-pink tentacles. The magician couldn't help but poke one with his finger, and it let out a strange cry right away. The hotel receptionist downstairs also heard the strange sound, and hurried up to check. Meanwhile, the magician grabbed a plate and stabbed at the tentacles. Unexpectedly, the building seemed alive, lights flashed wildly, walls trembled, and the magician quickly retreated to his room. He wanted to ask the old man if he knew what those things were, but when he turned around, 4 more living people appeared in the room, seemingly a family of 4. The receptionist gently stroked the tentacles injured by the magician, a scene that looked extremely disgusting. The next day, the magician gathered his spirits to continue searching for the exit, marking his path with chalk as he went. Strangely, many people followed him in the corridor that day, trying to touch him.
Enough!
Perhaps due to the increasingly cramped space, these people realized finding the exit was urgent, which was why they turned to the magician. At this point, the magician distributed chalk and paper to everyone, asking them to inspect the passages together. After those people left, he climbed onto a pile of discarded furniture, and happened to see the receptionist standing by the wall. The magician hurriedly called out to her but accidentally fell down. By the time he got up, the receptionist had long since fled. When the magician returned to his room, he found it crammed with people, like entering a refugee camp. There was even an old man brushing his teeth with the magician's toothbrush. The food he had managed to stockpile was also divided up completely. Even with the magician's good temper, he couldn't help but get angry. "You can stay here, but you must follow the rules." As soon as he finished speaking, someone else tried to enter. The magician blocked the door, but couldn't keep an eye on the back window. The small room became more and more crowded. He warned everyone not to let anyone else in, then left the room alone to look for food in the kitchen. John noticed the sneaky magician and said, "You can still come back to work now." It turned out that the head chef had been in a bad mood since the magician left. The magician simply couldn't understand John's thinking. "Aren't you anxious about the current situation at all? We're almost losing our lives, yet you're still obsessing over work." The magician left the kitchen dejectedly and found the door wouldn't open when he returned to his room, because there were so many people inside. The door had long been blocked, so he leaned against the wall to rest. In the middle of the night, the wallpaper quietly peeled off and covered the magician like a quilt. The next day, he was awakened by a telephone ring. The magician instantly squeezed into the room, and pushed aside the long-haired man who had answered his phone. But this guy not only answered someone else's phone, but also took the liberty to hang up right away. The magician missed the opportunity to contact the outside world, and couldn't help but explode with anger. He grabbed the long-haired man by the collar, and asked an explanation. The people standing around became unhappy. "He was just answering your phone for you. What's there to get angry about?" After hearing this, the magician's anger intensified. He pushed away the people holding him back right away, and fiercely lunged at the long-haired man who had hung up the phone. Unluckily, the other side had more people, and the magician was dragged aside again.
"You know, we didn't need an exit until you came."
It's my fault now, is it?
Calling yourself a liberator.
The magician had never claimed to be a liberator, and he didn't even belong to this place. The overwhelming sense of frustration and powerlessness almost crushed him. Just when the magician was on the verge of despair, he saw the chubby dog raised by the receptionist again. He followed the dog, and unexpectedly found someone cleaning the marks on the wall. The two people fled immediately when they saw him appear. The angry magician returned to his room, picked up a mop, and drove out the group of intruders. The map on the wall was torn to pieces. People in the opposite building kept throwing things at his window. To vent their dissatisfaction, the magician had to dismantle the bedboard and seal the rear window. He curled up on the mattress to rest, while the smashing sounds outside the window continued nonstop. Just then, the chandelier overhead suddenly started spinning, and the magician quickly got up to dodge. Sure enough, the chandelier crashed down the next second. The twin old ladies talked to him through the gap, and even handed coffee to the magician from upstairs, hoping to chat with him to pass the time, but the magician really wasn't in the mood for that. He went out with his notebook to continue exploring, only to be blocked by John and others. The magician hid in the room and braced the door, now feeling he would never find the lobby in his life. Upon hearing this, the twin old ladies put forward an idea. Just because you entered through the lobby doesn't mean you should naively assume the lobby is the way out, the magician retorted sarcastically. Maybe I overlooked something. The exit might be hidden in this very room.
Maybe the exit is in here. No, it isn't.
While the magician was venting in frustration, he unexpectedly discovered a real passage behind the wardrobe. It appeared to rise and fall with breathing, its walls covered in fleshy tentacles, a truly horrifying sight. So the magician didn't crawl in immediately, but stood outside and observed for a long time. He had intended to ask the twin old ladies to come along, but the elderly ladies preferred to stay in the hotel. Just then, music sounded from the dark cave. The magician no longer hesitated and boldly crawled inside. He soon saw a bright light and found a strange creature inside, resembling a large blue octopus. At the same time, people outside smashed the door and rushed in, seeing the large hole in the wall. They mistook it for a divine oracle, and knelt down one after another, shouting endlessly. The magician realized he could communicate with this mysterious creature. Attracted by the sounds from the cave, the people outside also entered, but instead of crawling in, they stepped on the inner walls. The giant octopus let out a cry of pain, and the receptionist rushed in to stop them. But it was already too late. The magician felt the transparent barrier begin to peel off. He successfully crawled out of the fleshy tunnel, and felt himself falling into a deep sea. The octopus swam over, wrapped around him, and carried the magician toward the light above. Here, the film ended. It's a highly fantastical viewing experience, like Alice falling down the rabbit hole throughout. You never know what will happen next in this movie. Some viewers believe the film depicts a dilapidated hotel, where one can enter but not exit, which can be seen as a microcosm of the world. The director categorizes those who stumble into it into three types. One type is egoists who prioritize survival over freedom. They excel at creating hierarchies, transforming even the smallest survival goals into grand ideals. Another type is those who pursue both survival and freedom, and thus constantly seek an exit. The magician is the only such character in the film. The last type is the rabble who wait for a liberator to appear, longing to be saved by others. At first, these three groups misunderstood each other, until the space became increasingly cramped and freedom dwindled, making finding an exit a pressing matter. In the second half and ending, the director finally reveals that the hotel is actually a living entity, a matrix or womb carrying Cthulhu. The shrinking space is caused by contractions, and the entire escape process is a childbirth process. The film contains fables, metaphors and paradoxes. As the saying goes, there are 1,000 Hamlets in 1,000 readers' eyes. Everyone can break down this wonderful story in their own way.